Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today. We're going to go document another ancient America site. This one totally lost to history, removed about 70 years ago. We're going to go down to Columbus, Ohio, home of the Ohio State University. Now here's the center of Columbus. We're just going to go maybe a mile and a half to the northwest here. Here is the site today. Let's turn this around and zoom in here. This is by the 670. This is Dublin Road. This is Grandview Avenue. So this is really at the intersection of Dublin Road and Grandview Avenue. But right down here, up until about 70 years ago, a large Adena Mound was right here, probably going back about 2,400 years to its time of construction, maybe around the time of Plato. This is where the mound would have been, right here. This is Grandview. This is Dublin Road coming down here. Let's turn back the hands of time, see what this would have looked like decades ago. And here in an old pic, you see the area of Grandview Avenue and Dublin Road. And here is the large Adena Mound, totally lost and forgotten today. Now this was first noted in 1888 as a historical burial mound. And this was known as the Anderson Mound first because it sat on the farm of J.R. Anderson. 2 years later, in 1890, the property was sold to a W.A. Pope. W.A. Pope and his wife Clara owned this property. They took good care of the mound. They planted sod on top of it and really took pride in the preservation of this mound. Mr. Pope called it the best preserved Adena Mound in all of Ohio. But that was certainly going to change about 5 decades later. It says, Mr. Pope was apparently an avid amateur archaeologist and described features uncovered during a tree planting at the mound, including several large stones which were set at right angles from the slope. Adjacent to this curbing, as he described it, he found a mass of hard clay. At another time, while digging a hole for a flagpole, on its summit he noticed clearly defined stratification. At a depth of 3 feet, he found clay containing charred wood. The curbing, he assumed, indicated the mound had a continuous base, protection of stones, and that the burned area was part of a sacrificial altar so common to these works. A quote from Mrs. Pope saying if you were sitting on top of the mound here, you could overlook the whole Scioto River valley here, and that really fits in with other Adena sites I have talked about, such as Miamisburg and a few others. These really were set up to overlook the whole area. But I found that continuous layer of stone around the base very interesting. There are other Adena mounds where some stonework has been found. What was the original purpose? Well, it's pretty tough to tell. Maybe 2,500 years after they were constructed. This should also be noted, Mr. Pope also investigated a mound a short distance away on the second terrace of the Scioto River near the current location of the Grandview Heights fire station, and I think that's what this area of Columbus is called, Grandview Heights. The mound was 10 feet high and 65 feet in diameter and contained 5 burials, all placed in a sitting position. Mr. Pope dies, and in the 1940s, his widow decides to move to California and sell the property. Clara Pope eventually sells the land to a Joseph Toephner. He doesn't really have the same respect for the mound, and he plans to totally bulldoze it to make way for a truck facility company. And then people got wind of his plan to destroy this ancient site, so they wrote letters and they tried to get this site preserved or get some excavation done here before the mound was totally taken out. And it kind of goes back and forth until finally into the 1950s. Finally, Toephner says the mound has to be gone by 1954, and some funds are raised for an excavation here, so some proper archaeology can attempted to be done. Now, experts determined that any burials or artifacts will probably be down at grade level of the mound, so what they did is they totally removed the mound, except for 4 feet of it, and then built a shed over it, and then did archaeological work here in the winter of 1953-1954. So work was carried on here by a Dr. Raymond Beebe, and they were given a date of April 30th, 1954 as the final date where they had to get this all wrapped up by. It says here, Dr. Ray Beebe and his assistant Bob Goslin were in charge of the excavation Because of time constraint, they decided to bulldoze the top 18 feet and focus on the bottom 4 feet of the mound. However, the Toephner Mound was different than other Adena mounds. There were burials throughout the mound, not just at the bottom, Gelbach said. They found 85 graves buried over a time period of 600 years. They also found many artifacts, including spearheads, clothing, and a one-of-a-kind pipe. Gelbach said the Historical Society has possessions of the artifacts, and many are on display. Now here is them excavating inside of the shed that was built over the mound here during the winter of 1953-54, excavating down here at the base of the mound. And this is what was found during that winter: 4 rectangular sandstone and banded slate gorgets, 2 expanded center banded slate gorgets, 2 Adena tubular pipes, 1, a very unusual example, somewhat resembling the later Hopewell platform pipes, having an upright bowl and curved stem entering the bowl at a right angle. Hey, right on. This pottery example represents a substantial design enhancement in relation to the diagnostic straight tubular form and the modified tubular type found in several Adena sites along the Scioto River, south of Columbus. This unique pipe is currently on display at the Ohio Historical Society. And there was also copper and shell artifacts found that were typical in Adena mounds, and the shell could have come from Florida, a long way away. But in just closing here from this article, and I will leave the link below where I got these pics from, it says today's post, World War II generation, probably are unaware that it once stood just 30 yards from what is now Riverside Drive along State Route 33, very close to the center of Columbus. What a special piece of our preserved heritage it could have been. We as responsible citizens need to do everything possible to protect remnant landscapes created by our earliest neighbors. Otherwise, this part of our history will never be remembered or appreciated. So this place originally was called the Anderson Mound, then the Pope Mound, then the Toephner Mound. Seems 130 years ago, and around the turn of the century, this place was preserved about as well as any Adena Mound in the area. The landowner had an archaeological interest, and he kind of revered this site and preserved it very well. The landowner, Mr. Pope, dies. His widow moves to San Francisco. This land is bought by a Joseph Toephner, and he plans to totally eliminate this place and put in a trucking business. The local residents raise money so excavation can be done here. 85 burials are found in this mound when it is bulldozed. These burials that were intrusional burials in the mound, I think those certainly came from later cultures that came along centuries after this place was built. 4 feet of it are left to do archaeological work. Artifacts are found here. Some work is done. Official excavation reports are really never published, but there is newspaper documentation of this. And some of the artifacts go to local museums. And if I'm getting any of this wrong, and you know better information, please leave it in the comment section. But this is what I'm gathering through this short hour investigation of this site. Now also in Columbus, there is a mound site right here. Let's just go down and take a quick look at that, because there is one Adena Mound in Columbus that is still here. This is called the Scioto Mound. And this history goes back. There is a marker here. But one mound totally forgotten in Columbus, Ohio, removed in the 1950s. Another mound, the Scioto Mound, important Adena site here. Seems to be an awful lot of stones just laying over there. I'm not sure what the story is from that site, but I just wanted to document this. The Toephner, Anderson, Pope Mound, as it was all known at one time. Adena, as they are called, because we have no other name for them, certainly put their mark in this part of the world. Chillicothe, Marietta, Ohio, Newark Earthworks, Serpent Mound, and Fort Ancient, just to name a few. Hope you thought that was cool. You all have a very nice day.